Did I just find the origin story for Atlantis in the Bible? So first off, if Atlantis is not your thing, it was a fictional writing written by the Greek philosopher Plato in like 360 BC, and it's about like an island nation who tried to defeat Athens and ended up losing. These are the details that I'm going to need you to pay attention to. Atlantis was a naval empire that was run by demigods who were descendants of Poseidon, the god of the seas. Lots of finger quotes here because, anyways, so apparently they were like an all-powerful trading empire, naval empire, and then they tried to conquer Athens, and that didn't go so well for them. So when it went poorly for Atlantis fighting Athens, or whatever it was that happened, apparently the sea swallowed up Atlantis, never to be found again. But I happened to read something like that, exactly like that actually, in Ezekiel in the Bible. Let me read that to you. Okay, so this can be found in Ezekiel 26 through 28. Starts with a prophecy against a place called Tyre, Tyre. 26 is the prophecy against Tyre, 27 is the lament over Tyre, and 28 is the prophecy against the king of Tyre. Let me read you just some bits and pieces about each of these. Okay, so it's talking about in 26. In verse 17, the Lord is telling Ezekiel to take up a lament against Tyre, and to say this in verse 17. Then they will take up a lament concerning you and say, how you are destroyed, city of renown, peopled by men of the sea. You are a power on the seas, and you and your citizens, you put your terror into all who live there. Then you swing on over to chapter 27, verse 3. It says, say to Tyre, situated at the gateway to the sea, the merchant of peoples on many coasts. In verse 9, it goes on to say, all the ships of the sea and their sailors came alongside to trade for your wares. Then it goes on to list what they traded with people and the countries that served and aided them in this. It goes on to say in 27, in verse 3 as well, you say, Tyre, I am perfect in beauty. Your domain was on the high seas. Your builders brought your beauty to perfection. So it's going on about how wonderful Tyre was. And I think this is basically like what their boast was. Like they were the gateway on the seas, the merchants of the seas, the center of trade. So do you remember we were talking about like how this fictional Atlantis was run by demigods that were descendants of Poseidon or whatever? I don't even know how to say that because I'm not a fan of that stuff. I worship the one true God. In verse 2 in chapter 28, it starts talking about the king of Tyre. Let's talk about that. It says, son of man, say to the ruler of Tyre, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In the pride of your heart, you say, I am a god. I sit on the throne of a god in the heart of the seas, but you are a mere mortal and not a god, though you think you are as wise as a god. Then he goes on to say in verse 8, when he's basically saying, your end is nigh, they will bring you down to the pit, and you will die a violent death in the heart of the seas. When then will you say, I am a god, in the presence of those that kill you? You will be but a mortal, not a god, in the hands of those who slay you. That's sounding real familiar to the other, story, right? So in this lament over Tyre in chapter 27, he is talking right here in verse 27, your wealth, merchandise, wares, your mariners, sailors, and shipwrights, your merchants, and all your soldiers, and everyone else on board will sink into the heart of the sea on the day of your shipwreck. Well, he's saying shipwreck, but this is a full-blown country right here, an island. Verse 32 says, who was ever silenced like Tyre, surrounded by the sea? Verse 34, now you are shattered by the sea in the depths of the waters, your wares and all your company have gone down with you. But that's not even the part that sounds the most like Atlantis, because you know how like everybody's always like, oh, I wonder if Atlantis is real, let's go look for it, or there's that debate on whether or not it was fiction that Plato was writing about. Well, like you've seen movies, there's a Disney movie. This is chapter 26 of Ezekiel, verse 19 through 21. This is what the sovereign Lord says, when I make you like a desolate city, like cities no longer inhabited, when I bring the ocean depths over you, and its vast waters cover you, then I will bring you down with those who go down to the pit, to the people of long ago. I will make you dwell in the earth below as in ancient ruins. With those who go down to the pit, you will not take your place again in the land of the living. I will bring you to a horrible end, and you will be no more. This part, you will be sought, but you will never again be found, declares the Lord. Why does that sound so similar? Why does it sound like Plato ripped off the Bible because it definitely be sounding like that. And the next video, we're not even going to talk about how in chapter 28, until the next video, that God swaps it up from talking about the king of Tyre to straight up just having a lament over Satan himself. Like, it is very clearly Satan himself, and we're going to do that in the next video.
If you made it this far in this video, I appreciate you for listening to all of that. I actually cut a little part of it where she was breaking down the things that they were selling to the people and that the products that came in there, which was another like 2 minutes worth of her talking. But you know how they used to say, if you let a fool talk long enough, he'll show that he's a fool? This woman does exactly that. And I'm just going to hit with the historical facts so that she can understand, so that you can understand that what she's talking about is a bunch of bull. The first thing that we have to understand is that they don't know if Plato's writings were in the 300s or if they were in the 500s. So somewhere between the 500s and the 300s is when these Plato writings are supposed to have been written. And Plato was writing based on what his grandfather had told him. So depending upon what you accept as far as the 300s or the 500s, that would determine when his grandfather actually told him these stories of Atlantis. Now, in the Plato story of Atlantis, it said that Atlantis sat beyond the legs of the pillars of Hercules. If you go back and look and research what the pillars of Hercules are, those are the Straits of Gibraltar. So he can't be talking about Tyre, which is a nation roughly around Lebanon. Well, not roughly, in Lebanon, where Lebanon is today. This is on the other side of the Mediterranean, where the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean meets. That's where Plato was saying Atlantis is. Nowhere near Lebanon. So she's completely off, just right there by itself. Then the other part is to understand that Ezekiel, what she doesn't understand, and this is a key point, what she doesn't understand about her Bible is the fact that Ezekiel is writing in and around 560, 590 during the Babylonian captivity under the rulership of Nebuchadnezzar, right? So Nebuchadnezzar had conquered Jerusalem, took away all the elites out of Jerusalem, which would include Ezekiel. Ezekiel is now writing a lament about Tyre. Here's the funny part. He's writing this lament about Tyre, or this so-called prophecy about Tyre. And if you really study history, it is at the behest of Nebuchadnezzar. Because what you learn in history is that Nebuchadnezzar then led a 9-year siege against Tyre. And oftentimes in the ancient world, before a king would go and siege a place, they would take counsel with the elites. And Ezekiel being one of those, of the Jewish elites, he would have taken counsel. So this writing of Ezekiel most likely is Ezekiel sitting in the court of Nebuchadnezzar as he prepares to take on Tyre. Now, in Nebuchadnezzar's attempt to take Tyre, he took the mainland of Tyre, but he never succeeded in taking the island nation part of Tyre. So Tyre is both on the mainland of the Levant as well as an island nation. So it's two, and he only took one. And then after he took the one, and then the Persians come in, and then it is the the Persians come in, and then it is the Greeks who then, under Alexander in the 300s, who conquer both the island and the mainland of Tyre, never sunk them in the ocean. They were always found. And guess what? You can go now to the city of Tyre. So it is not a place that you will not be able to discover. It is present in present day and is a thriving as city. So she is full of shit trying to force this Bible to fit into history when it just absolutely does not. And the city of Tyre only worshiped one Greek god. They worshiped mostly Canaanite gods like Baal and Yahweh and El and Asherah, but they worshiped Adonis was the only Greek god that was worshipped in Tyre, because they were of many nations. But the primary people of Tyre were Phoenicians, so they were seafaring people. And the Phoenicians are the ones who became the people of Tunisia, and they then became part of the Arab nation. Some did become part of Europe. You actually have 3 emperors out of Tunic who became the emperors of Rome. So this lady has no idea what she's talking about. Tyre is not Atlantis. Atlantis, if you went by the Emerald Tablets, was ruled by the Anunnaki, and it was Enki who flew over after it was destroyed after a volcanic eruption. Oh my